for anyone out there thinking of moving forward and whether in a partnership or not in their own practice, what are your parting thoughts or advice of any sort for that person?
Just do it.
What do you have to lose? Yeah.
Don't wait. That's like, honestly, that's like the biggest, I don't want to say regret, but like, it is true what they say. Like, you do wish you did it sooner. Like, I feel like we suffered and went through like too much burnout when we could have done this, pre-COVID, or like I could have done this right when I first met Sarah and she finally accepted our friendship. But we waited like 7 or 8 years. It's fine.
Yeah.
But yeah, you just have to jump. You have to be willing to take the risks. Like, just buck up the courage and do it.
Hello and welcome back. Thanks so much for joining. Today's episode is a really fun one. It's an interview with two of my coaching program practice owners who own Clash PT specialists in Massachusetts, Ashlyn Tersigni and Sarah Clayton. And then they started their practice in the middle of the pandemic and have absolutely killed it. And you're going to learn all the things that have worked really well, the things that didn't work, the lessons along the way, so that you can skip the mistakes and put things into your practice to get immediate results. Some other less common components of this episode, which are great, is looking at business partnerships and what are the keys to having a long-term successful business partner and business partnership. And then Ashlyn is a PTA, so if you're a PT assistant and looking to get into practice ownership, there's some great stuff in here for you as well. But really, this is across the board just going to be an awesome, informative, actionable interview for anyone interested in the cash-based practice model. So before we dive in, again, this is one of our monthly interviews that I do with people who are kicking butt in my mastermind coaching program, and we always release it just before, like kind of a few days before. They are the featured member in that month and do a Q&A, a live Q&A. So if you hear anything in this episode where you really want to ask more questions or more details, get more out of that, or questions that I didn't ask and you want to ask, then you can absolutely join us, and you can do so at 50% off of your first month. You go to drjaredcarter.com/mastermind, and then during checkout you use the promo code September50. So check that out. Come join us, be a part of this amazingly supportive group of people and practice owners like Ashlyn and Sarah. You can ask all of us all your questions and really accelerate your path to success. With all that said, here's Ashlyn and Sarah of Clash PT Specialists. Sarah and Ashlyn, welcome. So excited we're getting to do this. And why don't we kick it off like with most of these interviews, and each of you can kind of tell us a bit about yourself and your background, what got you into the physical therapy world, and then we can get into how you met and ended up starting a practice together.
Right.
You choose who goes first.
I'll go first.
It's always Ashlyn.
Okay, fair enough.
So I'm Ashlyn. I am co-owner and also a physical therapist assistant. I will have been a PTA now for, I think it's about 10 years, and a business owner for 3. What got me into being a PTA? So for me, I actually wanted to be a PT first. So I applied for a DPT school. We won't really go over how many times and how many schools. A lot. Yeah. I unfortunately got a lot of rejection letters or was put on the wait list. But for me, it was like where I knew my heart was really happy. So it was actually disclosed to me through my physical therapy mentor, who I actually worked with every summer when I came home from college, that there was a PTA program. And like, why don't I start there? Like, the cost was different, just to really see if it's what I wanted to do. And it was. So fast forward 10 years down the road, owning a business, I can confidently say I chose the right career path. Obviously, it really did suck. The first 3 years of applying to DPT school and getting rejection letters, being told I didn't have what it takes to be in healthcare. I wasn't like smart enough and things like that, but it didn't like set me back. It almost like lit a fire underneath my ass. I was like, I'll show you. But I guess too, what made me choose PT and be like really happy with it is I had a best friend growing up who was diagnosed with Friedreich's ataxia. It's like a very rare neurological condition. Yeah. And I always had this assumption that PT was just like working with athletes, like recovering from surgery. And then when I was actually got the opportunity to like work with her and then see the clientele and how much it varied, and how like we weren't just helping people like return to sport. It was like really improving like their quality of life and giving them back control, and just like the interventions that we had access to, how it was more like holistic in these things. It was like checking off a lot of my boxes, and it like really drove my interest to continue on with that education about like anatomy, the brain, the human body. So that's kind of like the background with me as into why I chose physical therapy as a career path. It was a weird path getting there, but we did it.
Yeah, you did it. That's awesome.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that will serve as some inspiration for others out there now being a successful business owner and 10 years in the field. All right, Sarah, how about your story?
I mean, I kind of started off on the PT track in college. I was exposed to PT a lot as a kid because I played sports and stuff like that. So when I played basketball in college, I play rugby now. Definitely no stranger to PT. So it kind of just got me thinking it might be a good career for me. I didn't really think I had the stamina for actual med school, but I knew that I was interested in the sciences, and I thought the human body was interesting and resilient, and there's just sort of like never ending amounts of information to learn. So I just started off on the PT track at Simmons College. So I finished up the accelerated program there and just went into the field. And I really liked that there are options. So you can work with all kinds of different populations. So I've been a PT now for almost 13 years, and I've sort of worked in lots of different settings. I worked in acute rehab. I was working with a heavy neurological caseload early in my career. I've done some home care, some skilled nursing. Then I kind of made my way back to outpatient because I didn't want to lose my skills there. And that's where I ended up. And so I kind of see it now as I liked the outpatient setting because I feel it can be a turning point for people before they get too far down that track of working in nursing homes. Like I can't really imagine a worse fate, like as I age, than to end up like spending the rest of my days there, just seeing what the conditions are like and the staffing, and knowing that you can change your trajectory if you give your body the right inputs, and sort of seeing us as more of coaches now to help people get off that track and redefine how they're thinking about aging and their longevity and what that looks like and what their body's actually capable of. So that's kind of like how I landed here as a business owner with my own clinic, wanting to make a difference in that way.
Awesome. And at what point, 10 years in the field, 13 years in the field, where along the way did you start to think in the direction of starting your own practice? Was it before y'all met and then y'all met and were like, oh, I want to do that too? Or tell us that side of the story.
So I think we both knew that that's what we wanted to do, like when we went into the profession. I mean, I grew up in a family with like entrepreneurs. So like I knew that when I went into healthcare, like I wanted to have my own practice because I wanted to do things my own way. And then when I went into school and actually stumbled upon your podcast with Sarah, I think when we were working together at Worcester PT, it came to fruition that this is possible and this is the trajectory that we want to actually go down. I think the idea of us owning our own practice, or at least for me, like started before I went into kind of PTA school, I would say.
And then just on that note, and we'll let Sarah answer the question as well, but as a PTA, it's obviously not as common to be an owner of a PT practice. So did you throughout school, like, did you ever say you wanted to own a practice someday and get reactions from people, or did that not really come up?
So it did with a couple of my friends, and that's what made me realize, and Sarah's going to start laughing, that like I couldn't do it by myself. Being a PTA. It was fate.
Perfect.
So yeah, to answer your question, yeah, obviously, as I start to say things out loud, I was like, okay, so like I am kind of limited, but like it is doable. Cause then I was also thinking like, oh, do I do something where I'm like a massage therapist then, and I can like prescribe exercises? Or I started to like, it almost opened up my eyes to, do I have to go down other avenues, or do I just find someone that shares my vision, that is a physical therapist and wants to open up a business with me?
There you go. That's awesome. So y'all were working together in the same PT practice as employees and came across this podcast. I'm pumped to hear that. I just realized that this is like the 10-year anniversary of this podcast.
Oh,
Around this time, I got to get the exact dates, but I was kind of looking in Google Drive and the first episodes in 2014. I was like, oh,
yeah.
yeah, that's 10 years. That's awesome.
That's
So,
awesome.
so you guys were listening to the podcast kind of together or talking about the different episodes, and that kind of started the conversation. Sarah, were you thinking in the direction of starting your practice well before that, or did that kind of spark your interest in it? How did that work out?
I guess it's always been on my radar. I'm definitely somebody who difficulty taking orders, especially if I disagree with how something's going. I see a need or an opportunity to do something better. Feeling limited and not being able to make those changes is frustrating. Anyone that's worked in traditional setting,
Mhm.
I can't imagine that there's anyone will say to you that they haven't experienced some symptoms of burnout, frustration around the limitations there, or feeling frustrated by administration and how they're being told to do their job when they're feeling like they could provide better care doing something different. So I guess the longer that I worked in the field, the more I realized that like if I wanted my career to look a certain way, I had to take ownership of that and to make it happen for myself. So I just happened to be lucky enough to run across Ashlyn.
You said lucky.
Maybe you needed her
On
too.
record.
Can you send me this clip?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah. We
So-
can splice out anything you want.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Maybe drop a beat to it. The more I got to know Ashlyn, the more I realized that we did actually see eye to eye. It's funny because when I first met her, I'm more of like, we joke because we say we're like yin and yang, right? Because I'm more like even tempered. Like like I would describe myself as introverted. I think I'm good with people, but I'm the type of person that's like, okay, time for some quiet time. And Ashlyn thrives in a very crowded room when I'm like, yikes. And then we kind of describe her as like a human puppy dog. Like they're kind of annoying, but they're persistent. And the next thing they're like living with you and your best friend and you're opening a business with them.
Yeah, that's awesome.
But I mean, it's like a gift and a curse. I think we push each other. I think it's been challenging in a lot of ways, but I wouldn't trade it to go back to what we were doing. A lot of people said to us, like, you better be careful. Like, you guys are going to hate each other. But I think we're just the right amount of a mix to hold each other accountable, to push ourselves to be better, to have hard conversations and show up and grow together. I think it's a rare thing to find that. So I do consider myself lucky at the end of the day, even though we still want to strangle each other sometimes, but we'll never leave each other. So
Yeah.
I imagine that most good partnerships are very much like that. I've had one other business where I had a true partner, and yeah, that's you have those times, right? When you guys started to formulate the plan and you made the decision to start your own practice, what kinds of feelings about it were you having to deal with or push through? And how do you think you did that? I mean, obviously, a lot of people in that same seat right now thinking, can I do this? Or should I do this? Or whatever. What were the things that y'all had to kind of work through to actually take the leap?
Well, for us, we decided to open a business during a global pandemic.
Oh, nice. Yes, that's a good one.
Once again, we had found your podcast. We started the mastermind with you, and
yeah, we
you know,
took your course
course.
before we opened. Yeah.
we thought we had to have all of these ducks in a row, and it was going to take years of planning. You have to have this certain amount of money, and you were kind of like, no, you need these things, and then like just start with doing
Just
mobile,
do it. Yeah.
do what makes sense. So you were like that voice of reason, which was like, oh, like, okay, like it's going to be hard, but like we have to start somewhere. So like this is the somewhere, but definitely like there was a lot of anxiety, financial stress, like how quick are we going to take off? Like how long are we going to be working our full-time jobs before this can be our full-time job? Like all of those things were kind of like running through my brain. Is this going to be like, what are the legalities with me as a PTA, like going into people's houses, those sorts of things, and like executing a plan of care? Like, how does this all work? Like, how are we getting patients? But having your resources were obviously, it made it less of that anxiety and stress so that we could take off.
Good, good. And what
Yeah, I
about you,
think you
Sarah?
have to have like a certain appetite for risk, right?
Yeah.
Because it is a risk. But my feeling is like, if you won't bet on yourself, why should anyone else? Right. And at the end of the day, you have a degree to fall back on. It's not like you're not going to be able to feed your family. There's plenty of contract jobs out there. There's plenty of work. Maybe it's not the work you're most excited about. So for me, it's kind of like, I might lose some money in this investment if it all crashes and burns, but I'm unhappy with the way things are going. So something needs to change. And I will pair it what she said. I think that your courses and your mastermind group has been invaluable as a sounding board and as a resource when we do run into struggles. So I think that's really important for anyone to consider when they're trying to take a leap like this. Like, you don't want to be like shooting in the dark when there's resources out there to help you along the way. So for us, that was an extremely like wise and important investment.
And we had a lot of support from like family, people who we actually still continue to use as like alliances. Like we had one massage therapist that was just like, just do it. And for the same reasons, like Sarah was saying, like the worst thing that happens is it doesn't take off and you just go back to working in the nursing homes or acute care type of thing. But like, you'll never know if you don't do it. So we had people who were kind of like our cheerleaders too. And we're like, what, screw it, we're in.
Yeah. Awesome. So for those listening and who you're on the fence, take that as your own cheerleading. And I just echo what you both just said. It's like one of the great things about being in healthcare is that there's always so much work. And if it doesn't work out, then you can always find side hustles or full-time jobs and pay the bills. So pay off those astronomical student loans. It's all there for us. So then walk me through the start. Like, did y'all actually start mobile? I mean, here you're in this great looking gym setting, but how did you start out and what were some of the challenges that you faced initially?
Yeah, so we started out with mobile. I think that was in March 2021 until July of 2021. And a former patient of ours introduced us to Clark University. It was a free seminar that Sarah went to. And then at the end of it, we actually got a mentor and they were able to direct us to, they're like, go check out these spaces. Cause we were looking for space at the time. Like real estate, I believe, was like really good at that point. There were so many vacant spaces, people trying to occupy it. And that's what landed us where we are at today. And we've been able to expand. But initially with like starting off with the mobile, the barriers were because we're in a pandemic, how are we getting in front of people to let them know that we're doing this? So like what marketing are we doing? Like, where do you start with that?
Yeah.
Those sorts of things.
The challenges were definitely at first with marketing. Mobile is a challenge as well. You just can't see as many people in a day with mobile. And it's also like super cumbersome. Obviously, some people, it works great. For us, it wasn't really like where we wanted to be. It's just a means to an end to get us started. And so that worked out well to at least build a base of people who started referring to us. Most of our clients are word of mouth. And then once we found space, we've been lucky enough to be able to expand our clinic in this same building sense and just kind of grow from there.
Okay. And so back then in the beginning, going back to the marketing challenges, what styles of marketing and things, whether you learned from me or elsewhere, do you feel like really kind of paid off and got you, something's obviously funny here. What kind of got the ball rolling for you?
Oh God. Yeah.
So it didn't really, it got the ball rolling. I don't know what direction it ended up going in, but we paid for the Facebook ads. We tried that. Unfortunately, I don't know if it's because the area that we were in, it didn't work out as well as other practices or the people were telling us it was reporting.
We did take a marketing course.
Yeah.
I won't say that we didn't learn anything from it, but it didn't work the way it was sort of sold to us as it was going to work. And it wasn't for lack of effort. We tried to problem solve through and through. We probably broke even on that. So it wasn't for nothing. And it did give us some exposure and it did give us some clients. So like you said, to get the ball rolling.
It can be a great way to get leads flowing initially, or just at any point. I mean, I obviously teach it and now include it in the courses, but it can be so hit or miss for sure. And as you guys experienced, it's like you can have a campaign going gangbusters and then it just goes silent and you're like, what the heck, man, I was really getting used to that. And so it's not something for those who are thinking about that. I mean, every market's different. And I've literally had students, and obviously the course you're talking about, it wasn't one of my courses, but I know whose it was. And I've had plenty of students in common with those guys, and some of the same types of ads y'all are running as we're doing great in other markets. So
Right.
there's so
Yeah.
many factors. It's hard to know if it's
Yeah.
going to work. You ultimately have to pull the trigger and invest in learning it and doing it, and doing it for at least a few months, because it takes some time to dial it in, and then fingers crossed you get a hit, but knowing that it's not always going to stay a hit, and you're going to always have to massage and change and try new things as ads just kind of fatigue. So really, just as a bit of advice for those thinking about doing Facebook ads, just know that if you're going to do it, you need to be committed to doing it for the long haul. If you get a hit in the beginning, know that it's not necessarily going to just continue to produce. You're going to always have to work those ads and keep them producing. So that kind of was one thing you tried, roughly break even. You got some patients out of it, but it wasn't like setting the world on fire. What were some other things? And it doesn't have to be in the beginning, but through the time that you've had your practice, you said 3 years, what other things do you feel like have really paid off? And even if it's like a word of mouth scenario, how do you optimize that? But what are the different strategies that you've been really happy you've used?
So we've just realized that we do really well in front of people. So just trying to put ourselves in situations where like we're able to connect. When we met with our business mentor who we got through Clark University, he really gave us a lot of advice on how to formulate like strategic alliances with people. He was giving us people to connect with so that we could get out into the community to get that word of mouth referral. Some of the advice too that we got in your courses that we take. So we tried to seize that a lot.
I think like leveraging networking is it's a really important thing for cash-based practices in particular, because like we're not going to, not that we didn't talk to doctors at all. I did go to certain doctors like that had referred to me at in-network clinics and just like to say like, hey, we're open, this is what I'm doing, but not really spending too much energy in that department because they tend to stay in network. Most of their clients are like looking to stay in network. We joined the local Worcester City Chamber of Commerce, and that was hugely beneficial for us. But you get out what you put in. Like we went to like every networking event. We made ourselves known. They ended up giving us the small business of the year, like the first year we were in it. But we were like going gangbusters, and I'm an introvert, as I previously stated. So I was just like, every time before I went in, I was like, all right, you love networking. like saying my, like pumping myself up before I got out of the car. But it's like, it works, right? And then you meet people, some of those people become your clients. Some of them are great working relationships. And in terms of groups like that, there's always almost no competition when it comes to physical therapy because other clinics just aren't doing this. So whether it's like BNI or other networking groups, I think that's a really good avenue to go on, where you can meet the people that can become referral relationships and start strengthening those relationships. Whether it's like setting up workshops, like you have to give yourself opportunities to get in front of other people just to have those conversations so they understand why it's valuable to take a different avenue when it comes to getting physical therapy care.
Yeah, absolutely. The networking part, usually when I'm asked what to focus on early in the business, how can I get patients in the door fastest? I tend to lean on that because the things like content marketing and SEO and a lot of those things are a little more like of a long play. You need them, but they can take a while to pay off. Facebook ads that work can obviously be a really fast start. But the networking thing, I mean, I feel like you go to events and network and you can literally generate patients on the spot, and you can get in the door where you can do presentations and all that kind of stuff. And today, like next year will be year 15 for my practice, and we still get patients. I don't see many myself now, but like we always track like, where did you hear of us? And we get these word of mouth referrals. I'm like, oh, that was the patient that was sent from that Chamber of Commerce content that I made 14 years ago. Those connections are still paying off to this day, even though I might not have even stayed in touch with that person all this time. It's just like a spider web in a way. And so that's awesome. Anything else outside of networking that really helped y'all get going and where you're at now? Like, so you've done some cool like open house and presentations, haven't you?
Yeah, we've done workshops. We hosted a lot of workshops in the beginning. We leverage our connections too. Like obviously I play rugby in Worcester, so that community in general is hugely supportive. So if you have maybe a running group or it does pay to be involved in stuff in the community, whether it's high school sports or like you yourself have a hiking group or something like that that you're involved with. Ashlyn was doing like Muay Thai for a while. So just trying to making sure that we're offering opportunities for them to come in and get some treatment. I think that helped a lot because that helped when those people have good results, then they tell other people to come. And the more you can kind of start that spider web of word of mouth referrals, the better. We set up tables at different events, races and things like that. We've gotten a lot better at that. I wouldn't say we were like really good at that at first. Again, going back to your material, we were like, that didn't really work. So it's like an ongoing resource, right? Because then we can go back and go like, oh, yeah, we kind of dropped the ball on that and then reinvent it the next time and have better success. So there is a lot of trial and error with that stuff at first, but once you kind of get it down, you're like, okay, I see how this is going to work.
Yeah. And then just for a little more to grab some actionable things for the listeners who want or are doing events, what were some of the things that you added in after you kind of looked through my material on it or asked me that started to pay off, like specific tactics at events that you're like, oh, that created a few more leads, or we got somebody to sign up because of that addition?
So we started having more things that would look attractive too on our table, depending on the event that we were at, to help us just have them come over and want to talk to us. We have learned that we should be doing these things together as well. So one, that there's two people at the table, and then two, we just do really well together, and we can kind of like, we know how to read the room and like finish each other's conversations and those sorts of things. So it flows really nicely. The sign up list, offering some sort of like free assessment where we specialize in like the foot and ankle, like a quick foot and ankle consult to hit some points and then be able to get in front of them, chat with them, maybe get some information from them to potentially add to our email list. Like those sorts of things started to work better versus us kind of just standing there with a table and our logo originally.
So like that's basically sort of like what we started out with, right? And then we did just take your like marketing course in the spring. So like an example of that was we were at a women's leadership conference. We've gone to that multiple times. The first time we went, it was just kind of like our signage, our table. After kind of like taking that, then we had more of a plan of attack that day. So there was a pelvis model and a foot model on the table. And I can't even describe to you how many people came over just because of having the model on the table. And like, we're not ones to like over medicalize things. So we don't want people like hyper focused on anatomy, but it's more like, what do you always say? Like giving them what they want, or like selling them what they want and then giving them what they need. So it's like, whatever, if that gets you over to the table, because then that gets the conversation started. And then having an offer, like if you sign up today. So we ended up making like $500 that day because we got 5 signups versus like, oh, like we'll follow up with you type of thing. And then it kind of like trickles away. Right. So it's just being more organized and having that plan of attack and knowing how you're going to attract the people that you want to the table. So that was super helpful.
And then we've applied that to with the soft wave too, now having that modality when we've done free soft waves, the same sort of thing, like going in with a plan, having that call to action after we do the demo, creating that scarcity, really hitting on that, the point that you said, selling them whatever Sarah said. I can't.
Telling them what they want and giving them what they need.
I'm like, why can't I repeat this? It's my dream, but I'm dyslexic right now.
It's interesting that came up in a staff meeting with my staff for my clinic the other day, where I was talking about selling them what they want, but it was like what we provided was also, we have to make sure that when it's not going against what you would normally do clinically or going to be harmful, like if we're not doing any harm. And I think it came up with you guys too, also on our call, but in both areas close together, it was like, well, if it's no skin off your back to give them, say, a little more soft tissue work than you normally would do, and that keeps them on schedule so that they get the result you're both going for, then great, right? So sometimes it's like sell them what they want and give them what they need.
You have to meet people where they're at too.
Right. Yeah. Because if they're saying, I want this, I want this, I want this, and they don't get it, then see you later after visit 1 or 2, right?
Yeah.
Well, that's great. I'm glad that y'all started to really capitalize on those events. And I just would highlight that idea of like, it's not just about lead generation that you follow up with. I mean, that needs to be a thing. If they're not ready to sign up for something, like at least get their contact info and exchange for something. But having that, if you sign up today, kind of offer with a really desirable discount, like that's where the money's at for sure. Okay, so I'd love to talk a little bit more about things you guys have learned as business partners and how to make that work, because it's not super common that I have business partners on the podcast. And so it's been a while since I've been able to dive into those topics on the podcast. So what would you say for anyone out there listening and considering going into a partnership in a healthcare practice are the keys to keep in mind as you choose your partner?
Mhm.
And then beyond that, how do you keep the relationship solid?
I guess I would say in choosing a partner, you need somebody who has integrity and who is accountable. You have to have talks like weekly. That was advice we got from our business advisor from the Small Business Development Center at Clark. He basically said like a non-negotiable is going to be a weekly meeting. You can never take it off the calendar if you want this to work.
Mm.
And we've abided by that. We actually meet way longer than an hour a week now. It's usually like 2 or 3 hours a week now, so that we're constantly having conversations about what went well, what's not going well, how we're going to problem solve, and being able to talk to each other with respect and coming from a place of mutual like problem solving towards the goal. Those conversations are hard, but they're so important. We personally do something called a SWOT every month. It's strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And so we each go through for our business. We make a SWOT for that. And then we do like a personal one and we review that once a month. Like it sounds crazy, but like it matters, right?
Yeah.
Because you're going to find out really fast if you open a business that your work-life balance can go directly out the window. And if you don't figure out like how to find some peace and take care of yourself, that's going to make things hard. So we support each other in that. I think that it's important not to expect everything to always be 50-50 down the middle. Like that's not realistic, right? So sometimes like someone's up, the other one's down. You have to be able to sort of have an ebb and flow and pick up the slack. And I think that we do that for each other, depending on life circumstances. Stuff happens. Your pets get sick, a family member has an emergency.
Yeah.
You have to be able to like understand that these things are going to happen and accept that like you might just have to bear the burden 1 month or whatever it is, and know that it's going to come back around when you need it. So that for me, I think is like the number one. You have to have those weekly meetings and check in with each other and remember that you guys are on the same team, because you're both going to get stressed out. Like,
Yeah. That was fantastic advice. I love that. If anyone out there is in a partnership and they're not already doing that, they should. And I would extend that if you have staff and not a partner, but you're not doing a weekly staff meeting, that's to me a non-negotiable. And that wasn't something I always did in the past, but I have for the last few years. And one of the big changes in my business when we started doing that a few years ago was that our average plan of care length actually got longer, not because we became worse therapists, but because the big focus of those meetings is who's dropped off the schedule that should still be on it. How are we following up? What's the plan for every single patient, which can sometimes be a lot, but that's a big focus of it. I love that y'all do regular SWATs at least monthly and include a personal SWAT, which is fantastic, and really support that and go through that part of things with each other as well, so that you as a business partner understand that there could be personal things that are affecting and you can accommodate and support in that way. That's really awesome. What about you, Ashlyn? What would you say have been the keys?
I'm gonna just echo everything that she said,
Yeah,
because
yeah,
I would have
for
said
sure.
the exact thing. I guess if there's like anyone out there that's like a physical therapist assistant, I know that I was concerned with not bringing enough to the table, just not being able to do like evaluations and that sort of like initial appointment. But then after talking with Sarah, doing our meetings, we kind of just figured out where we each fit into the puzzle. And like she said, it's never going to be that 50-50. We're just making sure we're hitting 100%. So knowing that like I am doing my part, I am helping her, she's helping me, and like just not, I don't feel like inadequate as being like a physical therapist assistant. What also is really great is, and this is something that she had said that she would do because she doesn't want anyone thinking that they're getting lesser care, is like, I know Sarah went to school, got her doctorate, but no one's coming in here and they're like, well, I want to see like the doctor today. Like, I want to see like Dr. Sarah. Like everyone introduces themselves in our practice, like just kind of as their names, because we didn't want anyone thinking when we originally started that they were seeing like an assistant, they're going to get lesser care. Why are they paying this much? I've taken all the same courses as Sarah. I try to stay up with the education. I think another thing is it's like you have to swallow your pride to a certain degree. Like if I don't know something, I'm asking her or outsourcing to get those answers. So having that growth mindset too and wanting to continue to learn, especially being like a therapist assistant, opening a business with a DPT.
Right. And I'll just take the opportunity now. I'll certainly have it in the intro, but just as a reminder, anyone listening to this that want to ask Sarah and Ashlyn your questions directly, or if you've heard something here today and you're like, oh, I wonder about this detail or the logistics of that, like how do y'all structure your schedule or any of that kind of stuff? Once this publishes that following Tuesday, we're going to have them as our featured mastermind members, and you'll be able to ask your questions of them directly if you join us. We have a 50% discount code for the first month. It's going to be September 50 as the promo code. So either of those should work. But this is unique because you're business partners and we don't often have PTAs as a practice owner. So you guys are really bringing some lesser known things to the table, which is awesome. Why don't we kind of cap it off with, for anyone out there thinking of moving forward and whether in a partnership or not in their own practice, what are your parting thoughts or advice of any sort for that person?
Just do it.
What do you have to lose? Yeah.
Don't wait. That's like, honestly, that's like the biggest, I don't want to say regret, but like, it is true what they say. Like you do wish you did it sooner. Like, I feel like we suffered and went through like too much burnout when we could have done this pre-COVID, or like I could have done this right when I first met Sarah and she finally accepted our friendship. But we waited like 7 or 8 years. It's fine.
Yeah.
But you just have to jump. You have to be willing to take the risk. Like just buck up the courage and do it.
There's no right time to start, and just know that there are resources out to help you along the way between like what you have to offer, Jared, and like if you seek, there's got to be business development centers at other colleges near you.
Totally.
There's really unlimited resources out there if you get stuck. So it's definitely important to just have the confidence, and I guess what's worth it to you. Do you want to just be complaining about the same things for the rest of your life, or do you want to be the person that does it differently?
Yeah.
Perfect. I think that's the best possible advice to end on, and I'm sure it'll serve as an inspiration. You probably just started like 5 new cash practices right there, guys. So high five to you.
Like the man.
So again, if you want to ask questions directly to any of the 3 of us, please join us at drjaredcarter.com/mastermind. And I will see you guys next Tuesday for your featured mastermind Q&A.
Looking forward to it. Thank you, Jared.
Can't wait. Thank you.
You.